Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, September 27th Lebanon City Council meeting. First order of business with the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Copeland, will you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we'll move on to the roll call of members. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mike Kincaid.
Excused.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Morris Jones.
Here.
Dick Robertson.
Here.
John Copeland.
Here.
Brent Wheat.
Here.
Sierra Messenger.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, now move on to the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, minutes are approved. All right, on to old business. I don't have anything on my agenda. Is there anything from council? Okay, new business then. First item up is Ordinance 2021-18. Council to consider annexation of the GCBM SLH Farms property. Rolls off the tongue. Ben, you can introduce this for us.
Try to find a longer acronym, but that was the best we could come up with. Good evening, council members. This is actually a unique situation. This annexation, we actually received a little over a year ago, a petition for annexation. We actually held a public hearing with the Plan Commission at their meeting last May, which was right around the time our offices started closing. So this never made it to the council for the actual adoption of an annexation ordinance. So it's been a little over a year since this
Did something happen in between that time period?
Yeah, there's a couple things that happened here and there. So it never ended up on a council's agenda, just with everything that was going on around this time in May last year. So it did go to the Plan Commission in May, and they did have provide a recommendation for the zoning district for the annexation. And then I can't tell you exactly what happened, is why I didn't get it on an agenda last year, but I know that it did not, as I was working with the broker. So this property, just to kind of give you a quick overview, this is actually the third step in an annexation that the broker was working on over the last couple of years. And this is the site, this is State Road 39 to the west, 300 north to the south. They have previously annexed a small piece here, and then a larger piece here, and then this is the final piece. And this is not for a potential development. This is, I think, purely the broker is looking to try to jumpstart the process in terms of marketing this to potential developers or investors. He wanted to go ahead and get it annexed to the city of Lebanon so that it wasn't a question when investors were communicating with him about potentially developing this site or purchasing this site from him. He wanted to go ahead and get the process started with the annexation. And again, that also jumpstarts the process in terms of figuring out how to provide utilities to the site. So this is purely a marketing tactic for the broker. There is not a development proposed here, but this is the third step and a three-step annexation for this property. And so, as I mentioned, we did have this at the Plan Commission last May to provide a recommendation on the zoning. We did advertise for the required public hearing tonight at the council meeting. So this would be the first reading tonight. Second reading would be at the October 12th meeting, that Tuesday meeting, and potential annexation at that time. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And Ben, just to clarify on the map here, can we pull it back up, guys? Obviously, the city lines are the purple, but we already did annex that other SLH farms. It's just not reflected on the GIS. Is that correct?
It's not reflected on GIS. I did double check to make sure the tax ID number was changed correctly according to the county records. It just is not showing up in the GIS.
So it is contiguous, meets all the requirements there?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any questions for Ben on that at this time? Okay,
Just to reiterate, that's a voluntary annexation, correct?
Correct. This is a 100% voluntary annexation.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council. Ordinance number 2021-18 is an ordinance annexing certain territory to the city of Lebanon, Boone County, Indiana. Whereas the city of Lebanon Common Council has authority and desires to annex lands into the municipality as defined by Indiana law. Whereas 100% of the owners of the parcels proposed for annexation as identified in Exhibits A and B have filed voluntary petition with the council pursuant to Indiana law. The City of Lebanon Advisory Plan Commission held a public hearing at their regularly scheduled meeting on May 18th, 2020, and forwarded docket 20-13 to the council with a favorable recommendation to assign the single-family residential zoning classification for the annexation area. The council has conducted a public hearing this evening, September 27th, 2021, as required by Indiana law. council has adopted a fiscal plan for the annexation of the annexation area in accordance with Indiana law. The annexation area meets the contiguity requirements of Indiana law. The council now finds that the statutory criteria for annexation have been met. Now therefore be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Lebanon, Boone County, Indiana, meeting in regular session as follows. The annexation area generally located at the northeast corner of State Road 39 and 300 North and adjacent to the existing corporate limits of the southern and western boundaries of the annexation area is hereby declared annexed to and declared to be part of the City of Lebanon, Indiana. The annexation area is further to include the contiguous public highways and right-of-ways of the public highways which are adjacent to the annexation area as required by Indiana law. The annexation area is hereby assigned to Council District 4 and shall become a part thereof immediately upon the effective date of this ordinance. The annexation area is hereby assigned the single-family residential SF zoning classification. And finally, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its passage by the council, its publication upon the passage of the applicable 30-day waiting period, all as provided by Indiana law. All ordinances or parts thereof in conflict herewith are hereby repealed. Any portion of the ordinance later to be found void or invalid shall not affect the remaining portions of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, ordinance has been read. At this time, I'll open the public hearing on ordinance 2021-18. If you have any public comments, please step forward and state your name and address for the record, please. Yep.
My request would be for there to be a professional drainage person that would be supervising or starting this development due to the southern area that is draining onto this part of Road 300. There's several small acres, 5, 4, and then even more with the Brandenburgs.
Mrs. Breedlove, this is for the property that's east of State Road 39, so I don't think this is the one you're talking about.
It's east?
Yeah, this
Oh.
is the one, we have two annexations tonight. This is the one that's east of State Road 39. Is that the one you're talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope,
I
just
didn't
one-
understand that.
Yep, no worries, just want to make sure.
Excuse me.
No worries.
My name is Cindy Wicks, and we live at 3305 North State Road 39. And our property backs onto that, and there is a severe drainage problem back there, and there always has been. We lived there 30 years, and that's been flooded. I also wonder why we were never notified that this was happening. I mean, we
yeah.
live right there, and we were never notified.
Yeah, Ben can address that. The planning office handles all the notification for it.
Okay. I also, I know this is past, years past, but when they first started cutting down the trees back there, there was an area that stood underwater for 6 months at a time. And I don't know. I just think you need to research a little and think about the drainage. I don't know, maybe you're just going to drain it all. But there were a lot of animals back there that were hit on the road when that was all deforested. And so it just seems like a lot of things are happening back there that neighbors weren't unnotified at all. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional public comment? Okay, with that then, at this time, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2021-18. Ben, do you want to respond to the question we had?
Sure. In terms of notices, again, recall that the Plan Commission meeting was, for this item, was last May 2020. So we would have provided notices to neighboring property owners at that time for the Plan Commission meeting. I don't have the file in front of me to be able to verify that, but we do provide neighbor notices for the Plan Commission meeting. For the statute-required public hearing that's tonight, that only requires, since it's 100% voluntary, to put a notice in the paper, and we did that about 30 days ago. So the neighbor notices would have gone out for the Plan Commission meeting probably 18 months ago at this point, but for the meeting, the public hearing tonight, it was just a notice in the paper per Indiana statute. In terms of the drainage, we certainly understand any of these properties are going to need somebody to review drainage. We have a drainage ordinance, and we require them to hire civil engineering professionals in order to do that. This site in particular does not have any development proposed. There's no development on the horizon. Nobody that I'm aware of that's even looking at it for development, but certainly if it comes to that point in time where somebody's proposing development, we will certainly make sure that they meet all of our drainage ordinance requirements for development. So,
Thank you, Ben. Any discussion, comments from council? Okay. Again, we're not voting on this tonight, it's just on first reading. The vote on this ordinance would be October 12th, which is a Tuesday, at 7:15 PM. So with that, we'll move on to ordinance item number B, ordinance 2021-19. Council to consideration the annexation of the Butler Ross LLC property. Turn it over to Ben again.
Evening, council. I'm not sure why I sat down, but I guess I'm getting my steps in. This is the second act annexation that's on your agenda for tonight. This is actually in the similar area, just on the west side of State Road 39. Here again, State Road 39, you see here on the east side of the property, 300 north on the south side of the property. This is actually going to be a two-step annexation. This property is adjacent to existing corporate limits on the southern boundary here, the Brandenburg property, but it's not contiguous enough in order to annex the entire acreage, the Butler Ross acreage, so they're actually going to do a deed split for this about 34-acre portion that you see here, annex that in one phase. Once that annexation becomes effective, then they're going to annex the remaining portion of the property. There is a development that will be proposed on this site, which they will be submitting at the appropriate time once it's in the City of Lebanon planning jurisdiction. It's not our jurisdiction right now, so there's nothing they can really submit because I can't review it. So they are starting with this annexation. They are working on some conceptual plans as we speak to submit them within the coming months. Once the annexations are effective, my understanding from the applicant is they're going to wait until the annexation is totally complete on both parcels, which will be sometime later this year, before they go forward in the Plan Commission with the development proposal. So this annexation here is step one of two. Again, we did hold a Plan Commission meeting this month, in September, and it comes to you with a favorable recommendation to assign the single-family residential zoning classification to this site, and we did advertise for a public hearing this evening, notice in the paper. And then we will look at the second reading and the fiscal plan at the Tuesday, October 12th meeting. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here to provide some additional information in terms of their plans for the site.
Yeah, I've got a quick question, Ben. So I remember annexing the Brandenburg property. For some reason, I was thinking it stopped at basically the plowed field, but does it go continuous to 300 north?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
the property that was annexed went all the way to 300 north.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. And then second question, and this is kind of a down-the-road thing, but just to throw it out there, have we talked to the county at all about 300 north? Because we're going to be in the same situation we are kind of with 250, trying to decide
Who takes
who
care of
owns
what?
what and where, and how much is going to pay for maintenance.
Yeah, for sure. As we get further along into the development process, that's absolutely something we'll do to try to figure out. We don't want our trucks passing their trucks to figure out who's taking care of what sections of road. So,
Yeah.
for sure.
Any other questions for Ben at this time? We'll have the ordinance read on first reading.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2021-19 is an ordinance annexing certain territory to the City of Lebanon, Boone County, Indiana. The city has the authority and desires to annex lands into the municipality as defined by Indiana law. 100% of the owners of the parcels proposed for annexation, as identified in Exhibit A and Exhibit B, have filed a voluntary petition with the council pursuant to Indiana law. The City of Lebanon Advisory Plan Commission held a public hearing at their regularly scheduled meeting on September 20th, 2021, and forwarded docket 21-44 to the council with a favorable recommendation to assign the single-family residential SF zoning classification for the annexation area. The council has conducted a public hearing this evening on September 27th, 2021, as required by Indiana law. Council has adopted a fiscal plan for the annexation of the annexation area in accordance with Indiana law. The annexation area meets the contiguity requirements of Indiana law, and the council now finds that the statutory criteria for annexation have been met. Now therefore be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Lebanon, Boone County, Indiana, meeting in regular session as follows. The annexation area generally located at the northwest corner of State Road 39 and 300 North and adjacent to the existing corporate limits along the southern boundary of the annexation area is hereby declared annexed to and declared to be a part of the City of Lebanon, Indiana. The annexation area is to further include all contiguous public highways and rights-of-ways of the public highways which are adjacent to the annexation as required by Indiana law. The annexation area is hereby assigned to Council District 4. The annexation area is hereby assigned the single-family residential SF zoning classification. And finally, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its passage by the council, its publication upon the passage of the applicable 30 days waiting period, all as provided by Indiana law. All ordinances or parts thereof in conflict herewith are hereby repealed, and any portion of the ordinance later to be found void or invalid shall not affect the remaining portions of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ben, quick question for you. This just came to my mind. So I heard Council District 4 on that. Was the Brandenburg, are you 4, John?
I'm 5.
You're 5? Okay.
I'm 4.
You're 4? I thought you go that far north. Was the Brandenburg property in yours as well?
Yeah.
It was? Okay. I just want to make sure it was, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure it was contiguous, that's all.
I double-checked adjacent districts to make sure I was heading in the right direction.
All right, some check. Okay. This time then, I'll open the public hearing on ordinance 2021-19. If you have a comment, please step forward, state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Lorraine Ann Cole, and I live at 765 West 300 North. And I spoke at the last meeting as well, so some of you might have already heard me. And I want to thank you, Mr. Wheat, for bringing up the road issue, and thank you for your time tonight. I have 2 concerns mainly, and that is that without proper planning in place for what is going to actually be on that property, we've already experienced problems in the past with building that's been annexed, and there hasn't been clear planning before it was annexed. And that actually happened on the property behind me, and I don't want to go through that again. We lost property, we had problems with property lines, sewer problem, drainage, I could go on and on. I don't want to get into all that. I'm just telling you, without a proper plan in place and understanding what's going to happen on that property, I don't understand why you'd even need to annex it, because it's already an R2 for the county, which means they can build homes on that property today. So I don't quite understand the need to even have a single-family jurisdiction on that property if it's already zoned R2 in the county. So that's my first thing. The second thing is, if you do decide to go forward with it and you want to annex it, I want you to consider those things in advance that need to be looked at. And one is the road issue. I think in the last meeting, we actually brought up the information about the road hazards that are in that area. That is mainly agricultural in that particular area, and currently there's large implements going up and down our road, and so now we have that issue of being a safety hazard for any home development out in that area. The homes that are in that area are usually at least 2 acres, if not more. I live on a 5-acre plot. Most people do out in that area. My point is that that's one hazard. We're dealing with agricultural equipment out there. Another is that that road doesn't always get plowed, and who's responsible now? That's a county road. If you annex out to that far out, then you've got issues. Nobody wants to claim it. And
So
in the last meeting, we heard...
just to clarify for you, so if we do annex it, the ordinance says we take over all public rights-of-way and highways. So that would become a city road up to the point where the annexation stops. So it's currently a county road, so if it's not being plowed now, that's a county issue, not a city issue. But in the future, if it is in the city, if it is annexed, then that would be a city road.
Okay, Understood.
Yep.
In the last
Go ahead.
meeting, we were told, that's a county road, we don't have anything to do with that.
It is
So-
currently, and we can't spend city money to upgrade a county road either right now.
That's a problem, because that county road already has cutover from 52, another hazard. And then you've got, if you decide that the entrance to a home community is not on 39, but it's on 300 North, now you've got more school buses, you've got a train track that's already hazardous because it comes up over a hill. Again, there is a very large safety problem in that area already. You just have compounded it with a community, and if it's not planned well, now we've got issues. That's my point. I also want to know about the drainage issue. We already have a drainage issue in the area. I know other people have mentioned it. It's not just on the east side, it's also on the west side. I'll have to go along with my neighbors on the east. It also has a problem all the way down to 300. They've put in several drainage ditches. It's not worked, and it continues to be a problem, so that's an issue. I also asked about before, have we thought about what protection is going to be in the area? Is that going to be city or county? Who protects that area? If we're still not annexed on our side, is that still the county? What about the effect on our taxes? What's that going to do to property tax? We'd like to know that ahead of time. Fire and safety, who's going to take care of that? Is it, what kind of fire, we know who our firemen are now and how we're protected. Those are all the issues that I'm concerned about. And I just don't think there's been enough planning for that area, because I was told that even the schools are, oh yeah, we have plenty of room in the schools, but you're already building Sunbrook Villas, Fisher Homes out in the Glendale area, Waterford. You've already just started expanding a lot, and I just feel like you're making a big decision here about 112 acres, not just the 33, because we know it's in steps. You agree with that, right? And so I guess I just want to make sure that the planning's done ahead, because we've had a poor issue in the past with improper planning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for comments. Any additional, and just Chief Batsey in the background, just to give me a head nod, we already cover that area from a fire service protection?
Yes, from Station 12, and we get apparatus response.
Okay, thanks, Chief. So that, for those at home, that was a yes, we already covered that from a fire service standpoint. So, any additional public comment? Please step forward. Yep.
I'm Sandra Breedlove, and I live on 725 West, 300 North. I petitioned against commercial a few years ago, and it went through. I also petitioned against the bypass, and it went through for a while, but then it was changed to a potential for not being north of an area that ended in a habitat that did not want it. It was changed to right where it is now, 4 lanes, which was to be for semi-traffic. I understand that that potential has not been eliminated, and the one thing that I would want if I bought a home there would be that there is a potential for a bypass of 4 lanes for semis. We live back off the road a ways, and it wouldn't bother us that much, although I didn't want it. But for an area that is highly developed, those people would maybe not, it needs to be in a contract that there's that potential still there. So is there an end to that, a bypass in that area up to the habitat area?
So at this time, what was being proposed was to do a reconfiguration at the, near the 300 to move the Lafayette Avenue exit north to around the 300 area. That was submitted to Federal Highway, submitted to NDOT, and ultimately not approved by them.
To
So
have a 4-lane where it is now.
to reconfigure an interchange there, yes.
Yeah,
So,
but it
so,
would
and
still
so the
be-
thought would have been then to connect, to shift 39 from where it is currently, Lebanon Street, to 65, and then a connector, what you're calling a bypass, from Interstate 65 to 39 is currently.
Okay.
But that's not, again, the state and the Federal Highway decided to move forward on the reconfiguration of Lafayette Avenue with the right-hand exit, so I don't think that they will plan to do another, we don't foresee them being able to do another interchange that close to where Lafayette Avenue is. So at this point, the connector between the two is highly unlikely.
But there is a potential that the 4-lane highway could be up to the Habitat residents.
I really don't think so, no.
You don't think so doesn't mean there isn't going to be. So they should notify every purchaser that there is a potential for that, because I would be real unhappy if I bought there and there was a 4-lane highway for the second decision that you made. The other thing is, please have a professional drainage person be involved in this site, at least before that you do anything, because most of there's a large area of drainage on the south side to that area. And then it goes clear under that field to the north, one part of it. Another is a culvert that drains into it. And for those areas on the south. Making sure that when it does get to that ditch on the other side, there's got to be a place for it to go. I don't know where that north ditch ends at. Do you?
Not off the top of my head at this point.
Yeah, that needs to be examined, because there will be more drainage because you have more roofs. And so with
But
the
it's
drainage.
also a little different though too, because we have a stormwater ordinance that requires the developer to retain the water versus what's currently set up with the farm field. They are trying to get the water off the field as fast as possible. So when we, generally speaking, when we go in, when an area is developed, the drainage is actually improved because we have a stormwater ordinance that requires the developer to retain the water and not just push it off into the ditches and culverts as fast as possible.
Yeah, well, because it does deal with a large amount of drainage from the south, I think that's especially important. Even if you have retaining places for the stormwater to be, that doesn't mean there can't be a problem with that, with the amount of drainage it handles now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional public comment, please?
My name's Tom Wicks, and I live at 3305 North State Road 39. And I appreciate the opportunity for the City Council to listen to us today as you're thinking on the other docket of adding 60 acres to the east of me and 100 acres, even though it's only 33 now. To the west of me, you're going to get another 60 houses, another 100 houses to the north off 39 and 300 north. And we were here last week to talk a little bit about the traffic patterns, the school, the police, the fire department, the train track, all that you are familiar with at 339. I did talk with Mr. Bontrager, and he's been really good answering my questions about the new Beezer development potential. And what my concern is that my property is is a nice piece of property across from Crystal Falls on the east side of the road. And we would want you, and I know there's some city ordinances about landscaping it, making a berm up, maybe for noise reduction, making a retention pond for the drainage systems, and maybe increasing some kind of traffic lane or something like that for people making left turns, which is a problem. And as time progresses, I know this is going to happen in the future, couple of years, but I don't want to move out of this place. I love it. We've been here 30 years, and we want the property value to stay the same. And some people say maybe it'll make it better. Some people say maybe make it worse. But I want you to know that we'll be watching, along with the neighbors that I've talked to make sure that the entrances to this new property that has to be off 39, and there may be one off 300, has a berm, has trees, and has retention pond. There's a ditch that goes through there, and there's a right-of-way of 75 feet on both sides. And there may be a park there or something like that. So that's north of Chris's, and this is just south. But I want to talk to you just a little bit about the future, that we'll want it to be nice, because as we watched the hospital be built, they planted trees along 39, but didn't maintain them. And so a lot of them have died. And so even though you have an ordinance to plant trees, we want them to be maintained. We want the place to look nice. And I know that Beazer will probably do that. They were really nice to talk to us last week. But I wanted you to know that you guys are making a big decision here on these two documents, and that we're right between them, along with a couple other people too. And I just wanted you to know that we'll be here on the October 12th meeting, and we really appreciate your time, and I thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional public comment? Okay. Does at this time then I'll close the public hearing at this time. I forgot to ask earlier, does the applicant want to speak on this proposal?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Brian Toohey. My address is 50 South Meridian. I'm here representing the applicant, Beazer Homes of Indiana, LLC. Thank you for your time this evening. I took careful notes of the folks that spoke, and if this annexation is approved, Mr. Bontrager, of course, correctly laid it out that we would be back before the Plan Commission and likely this council with a zoning petition. And at that time, I have the addresses of those people that have spoken, as well as the people that spoke at the Plan Commission. Before we come to those meetings, we'll schedule a meeting of some kind with our neighboring property owners. And I understand there's going to be issues about things like traffic. Mr. Bontrager's already advised us that we're going to have to do a traffic study and likely some roadway improvements in connection with any development of this site. There will be issues about drainage, which we'll have to address. Not that this addresses it at all, because I'm not an engineer at all, but I do understand the drainage flows north, and there is a significant drainway through that property. And somebody cited the fact that we will have to detain all of our water from our development and then meter it out in a slower fashion. Currently, I believe the property just sheet drains. We understand there are available utilities. That's one of the reasons we want to be annexed in to Lebanon. And we also understand that there are schools capacities. There's capacity in the school system, which is a big plus. And then lastly, there was a question about whether this would raise taxes of the surrounding property owners. My experience is that zoning on an adjoining property for a residential use does not typically raise residential taxes for surrounding property owners. Now, certainly if you develop a commercial development right next to a residential development, and it looks like the residential development might become a commercial development. You could see a raise in your assessed value, but I don't think that will happen in this occurrence. So with that said, thank you for your time, and we would respectfully ask that this be annexed in on a voluntary basis, and knowing that we'll meet with these folks in the future as we come back through this total process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant at this time? Nope. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ben, any closing thoughts from you?
I think Mr. Tui addressed a lot of it, but certainly we are just as concerned about drainage and traffic and some of those things that the neighbors identified. We do certainly, every single one of our projects has a registered land surveyor and certified civil engineers looking at drainage. So there are professionals on every one of the projects we look at, making sure that they're meeting all the requirements of the drainage ordinance that's been adopted by the City of Lebanon. That is definitely part of the process. And again, on the traffic side, as Mr. Tui mentioned, we do require a traffic study looking at how the traffic generated by the development will disperse in all of the neighboring streets and figuring out whether any improvements are required to those streets or any of the closest intersections in terms of adding turn lanes or widths or anything like that. So we'll definitely be taking a look at those things where we have the ability to make those changes, we will. That is something that will come once the property is annexed. So again, in terms of proper planning, I can't do any planning for this property right now because it's not in the City of Lebanon jurisdiction, it's in the county's jurisdiction. So I can't do anything until it's annexed, which is why the annexation is the first step in this process. Once it's annexed, then they'll go through all the proper channels in terms of technical review, planning review. We'll look at the standards associated with landscaping, with site design, with house design, all those things. So that's all upcoming, and we'll go through both the Plan Commission and Council at that time. So there's a lot of work to do before this project ever comes to fruition, and a lot of things that we're going to have to review on the technical side and on the planning side before that happens. Any questions for me?
Questions for Ben for the council?
Ben, with this annexation and the previous one, there'll be a fiscal plan coming for the second reading?
Yes, it'll be here at the second reading.
Okay.
In fact, I've got the draft on the first annexation already, the second one's underway.
Okay.
I just wanted to highlight the fact, I'm not sure everybody's on the same page. Discuss a voluntary annexation. This is not something we approach anybody, and certainly don't force people to do this. This is the property owner coming to the city, right?
Yeah, we were actually, a request came to us from the property owner to annex this property. So the city, it's not the city's position to force anyone to annex or require them to annex at any point in time. If they so choose to annex, we will look at it from a fiscal perspective and make sure it makes sense from the city's perspective. It's not hurting us fiscally or financially. But in terms of a 100% voluntary annexation, unless we mess something up in the process, there's not really any reason, any way legally to keep an annexation from happening if they're requesting it from us. So if we feel like we can't provide service or financially it's going to really be a detriment to the city, otherwise it's something where we really have to accept it through that process. But we're really going to hit hard on the development side of this one. This is an important property on the north side of town to make sure that we get right. So we're going to really hit this one hard from the development side.
Any additional questions for Ben? Any further discussion from council? Okay. Ordinance 2021-19 has been read on first reading. We will take that up on second reading at our next meeting, Tuesday, October 12th at 7:15 p.m. Okay, next item up. So this is not an ordinance, but this is just a presentation concerning the road impact fee, or proposed road impact fee. Kevin Cook.
Thank you. One of the things, I guess maybe interesting for you tonight, we heard from people, we need to make sure we're planning for the growth, for projects like this that are coming. So what I'm here to talk to you tonight about is, is just an introductory presentation about something we've been working on for getting close to 2 years now, which is our road impact fee study and our road impact fee ordinance. And that is exactly that. It's looking at planning for growth within the city, on the periphery of the city, and how our transportation system, how our roads will accommodate that growth. So if you remember, this is a study that really I think you approved back in December of 2019. And then we spent some time working with legal counsel to get the agreements in place. And then we started doing traffic count data at the end of summer of 2020. We wanted to count traffic during school periods. So once the kids went back to school, end of the summer of 2020, we started counting road segments. We started counting intersections. It's a large, very expensive, comprehensive study to look at all of our intersections, all of our road segments throughout what is essentially city limits, but also in a lot of areas expanding to and beyond the center township limits, so we can make sure we understand all those impacts. And then a lot of that traffic count data collection was done in 2020, and then we funded the study in pieces. So we funded the traffic counts, and then we didn't fund the rest of the study, which was all the analysis, until 2020. So we started doing the analysis in 2020, 2021, and so now we are just about done with all that analysis, and we have some information to share with you. So if I can I share the screen here, I won't get too far into the weeds because I don't know that any of us would have the appetite for that, but we do spend a lot of time focusing on the data here. So apologize.
Come on, Kevin, it worked earlier.
All right. Oh, here we go again. So try it again. 1, 8. Here we go. Okay, so just a couple of maps to show you, and these are a huge scale, but to give you an idea of the scope. Literally, we studied 117 road segments. We studied 52 intersections. We studied them on their existing conditions, and we studied them on proposed growth and development. So you can see all the road segments there in orange are areas that we counted traffic, that we included in the study. All of the blue dots, if I were to zoom in here, you can see those blue dots a little more prevalent, but you can see all the dots that go well out into the county regions. Again, we're not saying those are going to be city roads anytime in the immediate future, but again, to questions of, do we plan for these things? Do we think about these things? Well, here is a $350,000 study where we talked about virtually every road and intersection in Center Township and trying to understand if and when and how things grow, what is that impact going to be, and making sure that we're growing in the right way. So this is the overall study. This is the overall map area that shows all the segments that were studied. Just to give you an idea of the breadth and the width of this study. It's extensive. It took the better part of a year to count all the traffic. It's taken a better part of a year to analyze all the traffic. And so what we end up getting to at the end of this is we get to these inventories. And in traffic and transportation work, we grade streets, we grade intersections on what we call level of service, and it's an A through F, just like in school. And we primarily look at all the intersections and all the road segments, and we grade them on where they're at today. So what you see here is a list, and again, I'm not going to review all these, but this is a list of all the road segments, and this is what the existing traffic volumes on those road segments are doing to those levels of service as they stand today. So you can see those there. You can see that we highlight any time a level of service drops to C. C is not necessarily bad. It's more than passing by transportation standards. C is pretty much ideally what you want. If you think about it, A is free flow traffic, you're never going to have to stop, you're never going to have to slow down. You know, it's driving along 65 at 3 in the morning. You know, that is level of service A. Obviously, you don't design and you don't construct a level of service A, or every road would be 4 lanes. Every road would have just a huge amount of capacity that is never used but in a very small period of time. So really the target for most transportation engineers is in that CD aspect. So you're going to have enough in non-peak areas where you're pretty much free flowing through, but when you get to AM peaks, PM peaks, morning peaks when everyone's going to work, PM peaks when everyone's coming home, yeah, you're going to have to slow down. You might have to slow down an intersection. You might be backed up a little bit. But again, those are what you try to design for. You know, I've had people say over the last couple of weeks, well, shouldn't State Road 39 be widened so that we avoid those slow drives through Lebanon, you know, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, what do you want that to look like? Because a 4-lane road through there chews up homes, neighborhoods, parks, the downtown. You know, it's just not practical. It's just not economical that we try to meet level of service A. So for the most part, we're looking at levels C and D is where we want to be. So these, back to this, again, I'm not going to review these, but these are every segment throughout town and how it was ranked. And you see we do have some D's and E's and even some F's in some areas. And then what we'll see here on the far column is the mitigation improvements. So these are what would be needed to try to mitigate that. But you'll see that even sometimes with mitigations, you don't fully fix it. You know, if I could zoom in here, here's an intersection, Esplanade/Ulen, where it meets 39. 39 is not the problem, but those small streets coming into there that are low volume, PM peak, there's not a good way to fix you being able to turn off of Ulen Drive onto 39. That's always going to be hard. We're not going to warrant a signal there because the traffic volumes aren't going to be high enough in all directions to warrant it. So the only thing we can do is propose some added turn lanes to possibly help you get out of there, and so that you're not waiting to turn left or to turn right when someone's sitting there trying to turn left, which is near impossible. So you can add some turn lanes to make it a little better, but even that, again, because of the difference, the disparity in volumes between the two, we're not going to fix that intersection. But it's not a performance effect on 39, it's on some of those side streets. So again, this table here, again, not going to focus in on the details here, but this is all of our intersections. And for the most part, our intersections are currently performing pretty well. We've got a couple of intersections over here that are in the E category, but we have no failing intersections. So when I talked about earlier that, you know, we had some intersections or some segments that are showing failure coming into 39 in the peak, 39 intersections are included in all the study, and none of them are a failure. So we are not at failure on 39. I know some people get frustrated with the traffic driving through town and those PM peaks, but I assure you we are not at a failure. So we take this existing system with all the existing traffic data and we generate a traffic model. And then we look at another map, which is this one here. Take a second to pull up. This is where we project 10 years of growth for the city. Again, this is not forever, but this is in the next 10 years, where are the properties we think that may become developed. You know, so you can see a little bit of expansion over here, West 32. We've had a lot of developers looking at these pieces of land over there. You can see the Sunbrook neighborhoods up here that have developed. You can see some areas over here on the northeast side, including the Auburn Meadows neighborhood. You can see areas down here along 39 that we're projecting that those will continue to develop. And then obviously on the southeast side of town, you've got the Waterford neighborhood. So again, we build the traffic model of the existing system. We overlay into the traffic model 10 years of what we think is expected growth patterns. And then that produces, we basically regenerate those tables with those future traffic volumes, and we look at what now is rising to those D, E, F levels. And then we propose the improvements that would be needed to mitigate that. So whether it's adding a traffic signal or adding a roundabout or adding turn lanes, Those are all improvements that we looked at. We had a committee that was involved and looked at each one of these intersections, and we all made recommendations to our traffic engineers, especially when we got to a situation where a signal may be warranted. The question was, do you want a signal or do you want a roundabout? They're both pretty good ways at effectively improving intersection performance. So we had to ask ourselves, which one do you like? And that is so that we can have a model, have a growth model, have all the improvements laid out that we would have to make if the growth happened, and then that lends itself into us calculating our impact fee. So this table here lays out costs. So we looked at this and we said, level of service C on intersections is where we want to be, because really the intersections are the key to our transportation system and how it performs. We can be a little less on segments because a segment can carry a lot of traffic. It's the intersections that cause backups. So level of service E on our segments is where we went to. And we ran this model with several different levels of service. But to be honest, when we went to like a level of service C on segments C on intersections and D on segments, what we got was a very expensive traffic impact study that we didn't think the market would handle. So we backed up into this system, which is level of service C, level of service E. Very common in the industry. A lot of the other communities in the donut counties adopt level of service C and E, especially as those communities begin to grow. Sometimes you have to accept higher traffic volumes and lower levels of service. So, again, we looked at the existing system. We've got roughly, looking at the deficiencies we've got today, we've got roughly $2.6 million in intersection costs. We've got roughly $4.1 million in segments. Some of those are road segments and intersections we're already planning to improve. Fordyce, Grant Street, other projects. But those are the existing deficiencies. Why is that important? We can't charge developers to fix our existing problems. That is prohibited in the state statute. So we have to look at our existing problems, look at our projections. Developers can only be burdened with the traffic impact on what they cause. And so then looking at the 10-year forecast, if everything happened in the 10-year forecast like we hoped, or like we projected, we're talking about $42 million in intersection upgrades and $9 million in segment upgrades. Some of these are just not, what's applicable is we have to remove, let me back up. The 10-year is all intersection improvements, all segment improvements. The applicable cost is after we subtract out the existing deficiencies. So what we get are, this is how we calculate an impact fee. So we get the total amount of improvements that we have to make. The trip generation that's how many trips the existing system and the proposed system will create. So trips are every time you leave your house, that's a trip. Every time you come back, that's a trip. Standard house generates about 10 trips a day. If you think about it, that probably makes sense. A couple living in a home goes to work, comes back, picks up the kids, goes to soccer practice, grabs dinner, 10 trips a day. But we generate those for all uses, not just commercial, not just residential uses, but all commercial uses. And we end up at an impact fee, which is simple math of the total cost of infrastructure improvements divided by the number of trips that we are proposing in the system over 10 years. We come out to a $327.15 fee per trip. This isn't 100% final, but it's 95% there. So that number may change when we come back to you in 2 weeks and present an actual ordinance. But we're really close. So the question is always, where does this fit into the surrounding areas? We think this fits pretty well. It really fits right in, I think, the sweet spot. Noblesville is currently $370. Fishers is $260. Westfield, $327, right at what we're proposing. We also know that Noblesville and Fishers are getting ready to do another update, so their fee, we would anticipate, will increase. Sheridan and Zionsville are a little lower, but those areas are primarily all residential focused, so you just don't require as much infrastructure improvements to move residential traffic as you do some of the commercial areas that we're focusing on. The outlier is Pendleton. I have no idea how Pendleton got to $932 a trip. I will say, of the cities on this list, Pendleton is the only one that is not using our consultant. Our consultant is A&F Engineering. They're very good at this. This is really the sweet spot for what A&F Engineering does, is traffic modeling and road impact fees. So, with that, that's really all I wanted to share tonight, just to give you a high-level overview of where we're at. We've counted all the traffic. We've analyzed all the existing traffic models. We've built our proposed traffic models. We've calculated all the improvements needed to fix those proposals. And we've come down to what we think is a proposed road impact fee of $327 in that ballpark per trip. Yes, sir.
Kevin, for the council's, to know, how often do we have to update this road impact fee?
Every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
So, we'll have a chance in 5 years to see if we're on track with that 10-year. We project 10-year growth, but we update the study every 5 years. So in 5 years, we'll have a chance to see, are we in track? Are we halfway to those projections we made for our 10-year growth pattern? Are we way ahead? We'll be able to make adjustments on those things.
Okay, the second question that we got into in our meeting the other day was, tonight we sat here and talked about 2 areas of annexation. So how will they fit into the plan, being that they're outside the area at this present time? So
This came up when we were talking with the committee last week. The growth that we're seeing north of 300, although our study area went to 300, it didn't go much north of 300 for the most part. And we, as you saw on the map of projected growth, we're already seeing growth outside that. That doesn't necessarily scare me that we're wrong. It just means maybe growth is going to happen in a little bit different patterns of what we had accepted. I still think the overall growth that we're projecting is correct. It's just going to maybe look and be shaped slightly different. So we are actually going back, before we bring an ordinance to you, we're going to extend the boundaries of our study north to make sure we include those projects we know are pending. That doesn't mean we're going to have to go back and count, because there's not a lot of existing roads in those areas. We're just going to draw our map a little farther, because the issue with the ordinance is, once the ordinance is in place, the ordinance fees only apply to growth within the boundary of our study. We can't apply it to, if someone wants to grow out into the county and figure out a way to connect to the city of Lebanon, that's not something that we can charge fees on.
So every time that we would get a development coming in outside our boundary, we will have to amend our ordinance to accept it into our plan, right? Or wait every 5 years? Or wait every 5 years?
We would more wait every 5 years. If someone did come in and wanted to develop, and say the infrastructure was there to connect them, and they're just outside our fee study, then essentially we would be operating under the existing regime, which is, we want you to do a traffic impact study, we want you to show us the impacts that you're projecting, and then we're negotiating improvements. So once we're doing this, there is a certain small level of traffic impact for them to show the trips that their project will generate, but they're not fully modeling all the impacts that their development has. It's more just a trip generation report. And then our consultants, A&F, will review those trip generation reports. If they agree with them, that's the basis of the fee that we charge.
So do we set the fee, or does it have to be what the consultant says?
We set the fee.
Okay.
We set the fee. We can adopt a lower fee. We can't adopt a higher fee, but we can adopt a lower fee. We can craft an ordinance that might step into a fee as we grow. But we really feel strongly that this is a good fee. This is where we need to be. It is in that sweet spot that most developers are comfortable with, so we don't think there'll be any kind of pushback or outcry that the fee is too high and we can't do the project anymore. This is a very much within the ballpark fee of the other donut communities are charging, with the exception of Pendleton. But this would be, we think, acceptable to the market. So I would caution you against stepping into the fee because I think We're going to see a lot of growth begin next year, and I think we would be leaving a lot on the table that wouldn't be able to be funded in terms of transportation improvements. We would have to find other ways. So the real key with a road impact fee ordinance is that we're burdening the developers with these improvements. We're burdening them with the burdens that they create on our system. If you were to only say charge, say we're going to only charge 150 because we think that's where we want to be, well, the problem is then you're only charging the developer for half of their impacts, and your existing taxpayers are going to have to cover the rest of that impact, or you're going to delay improvements and traffic patterns are going to continue to get worse. So I'd caution you against it, but that's certainly acceptable to adopt a lower fee.
And developers have also been a part of our impact fee committee.
Yes.
Participating in the whole program.
Good point. The state codes on impact fee ordinances mandate the makeup of our committee. So we have to have people from the development community. We have to have a realtor on the committee. So we have people that are technically minded, but also in the development world, working with us to develop a fee that they think is reasonable. That developer that was on our committee works for Hinkie Development Group. So, obviously they're probably the biggest impact to any developer right now would be the Hinkie Group. And they're saying, this is acceptable to us, this is comfortable for us, this is what we see in other communities. To be honest, they like this because there is no negotiation of what impacts you have to mitigate. The fee is the fee, you pay the fee, you move on. Otherwise, you're negotiating, well, I think you need to widen 300, and I think you need to put up a crossing signal at the railway line, and I think you need to improve the intersection of 39, and oh, by the way, we don't even control that. This would just be, this is the fee we charge. We put this into account that can only be used to upgrade capacity of our transportation system.
Kevin, just to clarify too, the 327 number, that's the per trip fee, right?
trip.
So a single-family home you mentioned earlier, average 10 trips a day. So really, we're talking about $3,200 per new home, right? Or if we have a big company moving to the business park, this logistics company that's moving out 500 trucks a day, that's going to be 500 times 327.
Right. Yeah.
Excuse me, 500 trucks a day would be 1,000, right? Because it's in and out.
Exactly. Yeah. So, the fees to a single-family home, are going to be roughly $3,200, $3,300. Again, really common in the marketplace, so we think it'd be accepted. But where you really see some huge fees is any commercial, industrial, retail development. Those produce exponentially larger amounts of trips. It will not be surprising for us to see six-figure invoices sent to those commercial industrial developers in the coming years as they continue to build within the community.
Yeah, imagine every car going through Starbucks paid us $300, or McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
The thing about it is it makes it easier for the developer to know what his fees are up front, as opposed to having to sit down at the table
Right.
and have to negotiate those fees and what do you want? And they're, and you're fighting back and forth. We want this, well, we don't want to do that, This way he walks in, he knows what the fee is, okay.
Well, and this is a way too that the development pays for itself, right? We're not burdening current residents
We're not
to pay for,
Exactly.
but they're going to reap the benefits of that,
Exactly.
right? They reap the benefits of the improved
Trying to make
of
the development pay.
because also we can use this fee anywhere in our system as long as it's a new upgrade that's not in our available, correct?
Absolutely,
Right.
good point. Yeah, so say we expand the boundary to cover those areas on 300 that are going through the annexation process, assuming that those annexations are approved and there is a project brought forward. They'll be paying a fee, but that doesn't mean we need to use that money to widen 300. We could use it anywhere in the system as long as it's in a project that we have within our inventory. Now, and that's also not to say that if they're coming in on 300, that they're not going to have to provide an adequate entrance, A-cell, D-cell lanes, turning lanes. That's different.
Yeah.
That is not adding capacity to our transportation system per se. That is just what is required to get people in and out of their development safely.
Right.
But adjacent intersection improvements, adjacent road widenings, those are things that the fees can be used for. It cannot be used for maintenance, if I hadn't said that yet, it cannot be used for maintenance. It can only be used to upgrade and expand capacity of the system.
I had a question, Kevin, just actually two questions. Is that 10-year, is that the standard projection?
Yes, it's the required projection per the state statute. So we're required to project 10 years, update every 5 years.
Okay. The other thing, I think I heard you correctly, but because we have this major study done, we can come back and do partial studies in selected areas. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct, yeah. We will not have to redo the entire study every 5 years. Now, maybe every 10 years, we might have to go back and count all the traffic again, but it's not something that you're going to redo every 5 years. And remind you, from when we first started talking about this 2 years ago, the fee for the study is calculated into the impact fee. So we can reimburse ourselves. So the first project that comes in that writes us a check for $300,000, we can reimburse ourselves for the cost of the study that we just performed.
Again, no action tonight, just want to, again, this is starting the discussion. We'll have the ordinance at our next meeting, so we'll have more time for discussion. But any other thoughts or comments from council at this time? Any general public comments? Okay. Thank you, Kevin, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin?
Okay, any other general public comments concerning, nope, okay. This time then, would entertain a motion concerning the claims.
Make a motion, we pay the claims.
We have a motion to pay our claims, is there a second? Second. Motion is second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Any council discussion or announcements?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn, is there a second? Second. Motion is second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Our next city council meeting will be Tuesday, October 12th at 7:15 PM. Remember, that's a Tuesday because of Columbus Day. So not our normal Monday, but a Tuesday, so October 12th. Thanks for watching.